Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And this episode, we wanted to talk a bit about, well, there have been a lot of games coming out for a very long time. And is it always so important to play the game right when they come out? And what do you gain and what do you lose by coming back to them later?
Yeah, it was something I was thinking about the other day because I've been playing Dragon's Dogma on the Switch, which is a game that came out almost 4 years ago, I think, 4 or 5 years ago.
Something like that.
And it was originally a PC release, and I believe that generation of console, and then it recently got an update for the PC, and they also re-released it on the Switch with some improvements. And having never played it, I figured I'd pick it up for the Switch. It's by the creator of Devil May Cry 5, which I haven't played yet, but I'm a huge fan of the Devil May Cry series. And I ended up really liking the game. I'm really enjoying it. I got sucked in. It's an open world action RPG, you know, a la think Skyrim or The Witcher. It's that kind of a game where you pick up quests, do quests, things happen. It's that kind of good stuff. And I was like, I'm enjoying this so much, and I didn't play it 4 years ago. And the fact that it's not new isn't affecting my playing of this game. And so then I thought about, well, I used to put so much pressure to play on myself to play these new games like the aforementioned Devil May Cry 5, which I still haven't played. And there are rumors about a Switch version, so I may hold off. But, like, I feel like there are certain games that lend to an urgency just as a fan to want to play. And then, of course, the bigger picture of the games journalism, like, you have to play certain new games, like it's just your job. But, like, as a fan, I'm always curious why there's an importance to play new games other than to be in the conversation.
Well, that is one of the big ones, being part of the conversation. I mean, before multiplayer or online multiplayer became a huge deal, it was simply the idea of you wanted to be one of the cool kids. I mean, we are both men in our 30s talking about this, but it's easy to forget that sort of urgency from when we were kids. When a game would come out and everybody was playing it, or you would go to someone's house and they just got this game and oh my God. And it's also when enough people are playing it that you become aware of it. It's very important for the company themselves. You know, they want to sell and sell quickly, and while everybody's playing it, it gets you into it. But yeah, other than that, I suppose, yeah, an online experience is important.
Well, yeah, I think that's a good point, is the online experience is important. Like, people are still playing World of Warcraft now, and if you got into it now and not when it launched, you could still have a great time. But this idea of playing an MMO when it first goes live, when everyone's playing it, like, that's when the hype is strongest, when all of your friends will be playing and that kind of a thing. It's one of the reasons I no longer play Monster Hunter World, even though I really like it, is most of my friends have moved on. And though there's a huge community of people I don't know playing that I could team up with or play with, I'm sure, it's not quite the same.
Right.
And as opposed to like a single player experience. And I think what's a little different now is, like, when we were growing up, the only way you could talk about games is with the 5 people in your high school that also played games. You couldn't, there was no, there were forums, but not as prolific as they are now. And I think it's a little different now, like the fact that I've been playing Dragon's Dogma and posting about it on my social media and posting about it on our Discord, and people are interacting and talking about it, even though it's an old game, because there's a way to restart those kinds of conversations where when you're hanging out with your friends, yeah, you could go back and talk about this thing, but, like, if it was a brand new thing and you weren't playing it, you missed out on that conversation in the moment. There was no later conversation, more or less.
No, that's true. And it also, if you get in something on the ground floor like World of Warcraft, say, you can then be part of the population that's complaining that it was so much better when it first came out, and the experience is ruined now, and you know these new players today don't know, etc., etc.
Yeah, I suppose being a part of the newness gives you an availability to complain a little bit as well, and be part of the angry mob, as it were.
Yeah, but by the same token, the fact that you waited until you sort of got a new game when you got Dragon's Dogma, you got the Switch release,
which is a brand new release. That's true.
Yeah, by the same token, I bought Final Fantasy XII for the Nintendo Switch the on release date because I'm a big Final Fantasy fan, and I never finished Final Fantasy 12 on the PS2. I played a few hours into it, which is nowhere near finishing it. But after getting the Switch version, there are so many quality of life improvements
I'm sure.
that, oh my gosh, I will probably finish it this time. It's great. Um, and even before it had arrived at my home, because like we had ordered it and so it was being sent over, I was reading a review and it was one of those just Final Fantasy 12 on the Switch like has some amazing stuff to it that no other version has. Well, the Xbox One does, but the new version that came out does these things. So it was almost like, well done on holding off. And I think re-releases and ports and everything else also kind of muddies the issue a little bit. Do you get the very first version when it first comes out, before DLC, before patches, before Game of the Year editions, before Royal editions, before any of that? So it's interesting how the conversation gets little points of life breathed back into them as well.
Sure. I mean, I experienced the same thing playing Final Fantasy IX on the Switch because I had never played that one through. I had played very little of it, and now I'm quite a ways into it. Of course, it's on hold for now because I'm playing Dragons of Dogma, but I felt the same way. Like, there are some quality of life improvements. Like, you can make it so there are like some meta things that you can turn on, like turning off random battles or increasing your level, like if you just want to get through the game to see the story, which I thought was really neat. And I don't really use them. On occasion, if I'm traveling on the world map, I'll turn off random encounters so I can get from point A to point B if I have a purpose, like if I'm focused on finishing a quest or part of the mission. But for the most part, I play it as is. But even just the graphical quality of life upgrades, it's less pixelated, it's more smooth. It doesn't have the sprite smoothing that the stupid PC versions have, but it does. It just looks crisper and like it's easier to follow the action on the screen.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
And so those kinds of improvements are always great when an old game is released new. But to the same degree, there is this pressure. There's, like we talked about it in our year in review earlier this year, that like over 200 games came out last year, and you and I played not even a fraction of that.
Right.
And the idea that there's always these new games that come out, and like I was recently updating my Amazon wishlist, which you can find if you'd like. I always welcome presents, but really don't buy me anything. I'm kidding. But I was updating it just to have, because I like to. It's an easier way for me to keep track of the things that I want, because I'm an old man in my mid-30s and I forget things.
Right.
And so I was adding the Spyro collection to it, and God of War, the new one. And a few other PS4 games that I haven't played yet that I've wanted to play, and they're all around $30. And they were full price when they came out, but because it's been several years since their release at this point, the price has dropped. And it's like, that's your reward for waiting to play some of these games, because the experience won't be any less. Like, they won't be any less good if they're a good game just because you waited a year or two to play them. Yes, you miss out on some of the conversations, but again, because the internet is constant and people will often interact with you if you mention a thing that you're into, especially if you're in the right groups or communities, there's no real pressure to play those games as soon as they come out, unless you're hyped for it. Now, that's a different story. If anyone has listened to this podcast even once or twice, they know that Geoff and I are huge side-scrolling platformer fans.
Right.
Action-adventure games. And very recently, as of when we're recording, they finally released the release date of Bloodstain, the full version of Bloodstain, Ritual of the Night, which comes out on June 25th, which is almost 2 months away. A little.
Now,
less
to be
than 2
clear,
months.
that's the Switch release. All the other systems, it's a week before.
Correct. But of course, if you know anything about us, it's that me and
June
Geoff
25th is the one we're waiting for.
Right, we're whores for the Nintendo Switch. And so, like, that's really exciting to me, and I'm going to get that game on day one, and I'm super stoked for it. And I think it's because there's a level of excitement that makes me want to play it. That said, like, again, I never experienced the rush of excitement for games that I'm playing now that are older, like Dragon's Dogma or Final Fantasy, but I'm still enjoying them just as much now. I'm not getting anything less out of them because I didn't have the hype leading up. And so I think it's interesting the kind of mental state you go into playing a game with. I mean, it could have just very well been that I hated Dragon's Dogma. Like, I buy this old game or older game and then didn't like it, but I did get sucked into it. And so I think also I've been burned by so many games that, like, I was told, oh, you got to play it. You got to play this game. And then I get it on day one and I'm not as into it as maybe other people are. And maybe that's why I tend to want to give games some space to see, like, to really find out more about them, maybe without spoiling the story, to see if it's really a thing I'll be into.
Yeah, the two PS4 games that I absolutely bought on other people's insistence and recommendation are games that I didn't play a whole lot.
Yeah.
And that was Tekken 7 and, oddly enough, Monster Hunter World. And not out of any distaste or displeasure for the series themselves or those games. I feel as though Monster Hunter World, when I got it, I was not in a... I was very easily overwhelmed. There was a bunch of other things going on, and so I kind of put it down and haven't gone back. And Tekken 7's a lot of fun, but I don't know. I paid for the deluxe edition, and I should not have. I got some entertainment out of it, but not as much as I should have. But there's also the matter of when you are... I mean, we keep mentioning the conversation, being part of the conversation or anything like that. This also brings into focus the idea of spoilers.
Right.
And not just the matter of the storyline itself, but aspects of the game, because there are video game experiences where even saying that there's a genre shift or a change in which character you play is a huge spoiler. And there is a certain, I don't know, polite society agreement of we don't talk about what happens in this game for 6 months.
Right.
Or we don't reveal these huge twists, and then, like, after a year or so, it is accepted that that's what that is. I mean, I just recently watched the completionist New Game Plus video where he goes back and plays his first game, his first 150 games. He revisits them for a lot of reasons. I rewatched his New Game Plus on Portal, which is a game that I did not play immediately, and is sort of a gaming cultural landmark in so many ways.
Yeah, for sure.
But even in that review, he's talking about the fact that there are so many little twists and turns. There's so many, like, truly meme-worthy moments. I mean, like, even if you've never played Portal, if you have been involved with internet culture or games, you know that the cake is a lie.
Right.
And so when you play the game and early on it mentions, like, you know, you'll get to the end of the chamber, you'll get to the end of this, and then there will be cake. You instinctively just go, the cake is a lie. You already know what's going to happen. It is a game that at this point is nigh impossible if you are, I don't know, like I said, if you are steeped in gaming culture, that it is nigh impossible to play that unspoiled without any of those surprises. It is a credit to the game that it is still a fantastic game, a very tight experience, and well worth playing. But if you don't get on the game soon enough, you miss out on making these discoveries for yourself or having to make a great effort to avoid them. I did that when it came time for Undertale. I knew that I wanted to play it, and it apparently was... knowing that there's spoiler-worthy stuff in an RPG is no... yeah, great, and hats go on your head. But, and so I was able to kind of hold off on that. I did learn very early on about pacifist ending and genocide ending, so there was a certain, okay, don't kill anything. Cool. Yeah. Which I also could have gotten as a suggestion from a friend sitting in the room with me if it were that kind of situation. But still, not getting in there quickly meant that the odds of me having a purely new experience diminishes. almost exponentially.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Undertale because we talked about Undertale on one of the most recent episodes of Screen Snark, where you were a guest on, as well as MJ, and because Rachel's replaying it on the Switch, and the Switch is the first time I played Undertale. But I had intentionally spoiled myself on Undertale through the Game Theorist and through the Completionist, actually, because the Completionist, when he completed Undertale, it was back before he wasn't doing spoilers, so he did a full spoiler episode with multiple endings, and like it was wonderful. I loved watching it. It made me more interested in the game. And what was interesting about Undertale is even playing it for the first time, even knowing about the different kinds of runs, I'm gonna try not to spoil plots for Undertale still, just because if you haven't played it, it's worth playing. But it does turn certain game mechanics on its head, and having that knowledge ahead of time made playing the game for the first time more stressful because I was overthinking it a little bit. But that said, I still had a blast because the thing about spoilers, and we're in a spoiler culture, and like as of when we're recording, Geoff has still not seen Endgame. We will not be talking about it. Not that we would have anyway, I don't think, because it's still too soon. But you know, I get that. I get not wanting to spoil a big moment like that. There's not going to be another movie moment quite like Endgame in the same way, you know, especially like me and Geoff, who grew up on these movies, who've been watching them for the last 10 years, 11 years at this point. I think that spoilers don't always do harm. I think the reason I was so interested in Undertale is because it had such a dynamic story and the characters were so interesting, and I wanted to experience for myself. And even having all of the plot spoiled, all of the runs spoiled, everything about all the characters spoiled, when I interacted with those characters for the first time, it still felt fresh, and that is a testament to the quality of the game that Toby Fox made. And I think really good content outshines being new or not, essentially. You know, the fact that the first time I meet the Skeleton Brothers, they're incredible, and I'm laughing, and I'm having a blast, and I'm enjoying it. And knowing about them and knowing how the story goes didn't take anything away from that. And I think that's really fascinating to me. And that may not be the same for everybody. Not everybody reacts to spoilers the same way. And I know for a fact, going back to Endgame just briefly, if the stuff that I've now seen had been spoiled for me, I might have been angry, upset, disappointed, blah, 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 you know? And so I think it just depends on the person and the experience that you're looking for.
And I think that's what it really comes down to, the idea of the individual experience. And there are so many games out there where the quality of the gameplay experience is paramount. It outshines everything else. But there are some people who want to know certain spoilers going in. There are some people who want to know about certain notions of content or certain ideas of, I don't know, themes, or am I going to find the game fun? Is this going to upset me? As well as video games are, to me, one of the reasons why I love talking about them so much. One of the reasons I love them so much is they are one of the purest player-prompted experiences or consumer-prompted experiences. We have a very internet culture where, you know, a trailer for Sonic the Hedgehog comes out and we all feel like we have ownership and control and need to have that thing redesigned right now. But
yeah, and the thing about that is, like, we're so reactionary, and it immediately disrespects the artistic vision of the designers of Sonic for the movie, love it or hate it, but also, like, the director saying that they'll change it. Well, it's not his job to change that. It's the animator's job to change it, and he's committing to work for his animators that they may not be prepared for, able to do, comfortable with doing, ready to do. Like, it's astonishing to me how nerd culture can be so black and white sometimes, and the fact that, like, the same gamers who are complaining about not changing Sekiro's difficulty and not adding an easy mode because it messes with the artistic vision of the creators are the same ones who are super vocal about Sonic's shitty design and that they want him to they want them to change it. Like,
I would love to see the Venn diagram of actual, like, crossover of that, like which people have complained about both.
Right? And the thing is, like, look, I agree. I think Sonic with human teeth is terrifying. But That said, I didn't say change it. I just said I didn't like this thing. Because I know better. I know that this kind of stuff takes a ton of work, and that movie has way more problems than just the design of Sonic. Like, I'm one of the people carrying the flag for Jim Carrey. I still like him as a performer. I love his crazy 90s antics, and it seems like his Robotnik will be the same kind of character, which I'm here for. However, nothing else about that movie looked good. I'll probably still see it because I'm a Sonic fan, and I sometimes to my own detriment. But that said, I wasn't crying for them to redesign this character. Let it exist as it exists, and let's see what happens. If it's a trash fire, so be it. But changing how he looks probably isn't going to change that, because the biggest problem is definitely not how Sonic looks. It's just a problem.
It's a lightning rod of all of the other issues,
Right.
and that makes sense. He's very, very blue.
But that said, it's a good point though, talking about, the player experience and why. I mean, that's why we've said on many episodes that we think video game movies at its core don't really work, is because when you're trying to ape what already exists, instead of doing something new, it's not going to live up. And like, the one thing I'll give about the Sonic trailer is like, it is trying something new. The story seems a little different. Like, Sonic seems otherworldly or from somewhere else, and like the humans don't understand him. And so like, they're trying a different narrative. Robotnik works for the military, whatever it is. Like, I get trying to do that. And also, Sonic doesn't have much of a story, especially the first 3 games. Like, the modern Sonic games definitely do, but like,
Oh yeah.
I don't know, getting up, like, it just doesn't look good. I don't think the storyline is the problem, though. I think it's how it's being executed is the problem. But that said, shifting the conversation back to games, I think when we see new games and we see them either good or bad, we want to experience it quickly to get in on that kind of a conversation like Sonic is generating now as of when we're recording. I think we want to participate in that, especially if you follow any news outlets. Like, I am a big fan of Waypoint, which is Vice's gaming section, and the Waypoint podcast. And they all often talk about what's new. They do game reviews. They talk about their experience with those games. And like, but I don't think their conversations mean less to me, even if I haven't played the game, because if I haven't played the game and they're not going into spoiler territory, I'm still curious to hear what they think about this game that I haven't played yet, because maybe it'll make me want to play it. And I don't think that, like, game journalists playing games immediately makes total sense, especially if you need to write about it, do a podcast about it, whatever the case is. But if you don't, I think relying on that stuff for feedback is important, and maybe taking some time to not play the game as soon as it comes out so you can see if you might really be into it or not. I mean, it's why I've waited so long on the new God of War, because I didn't like the PS2 God of War games. I know, I'm weird. It's fine. But it's because I got into Devil May Cry at the time, honestly, and they were both very similar hack and slashy games, and the gothy demon aesthetic, shocker, was what I was more into instead of the gods of old God of War story. But the new game looks so beautiful, and the combat looks so interesting, and the story seems so intriguing and personal that I'm more interested in this new game than the others. But I waited because I wanted to make sure it was something I would actually enjoy playing, since I didn't like any of the previous installments, which to me made perfect sense. Whereas if you're a diehard God of War fan, you may not want to wait that time. And I get that too. Like, the Mass Effect series, as y'all know, I am a huge fan of. I have a whole podcast about it. And when the 3rd game came out, I was in line at midnight to buy it and go home and play it for 4 hours. Whereas Andromeda, because of the feedback and the backlash, I avoided completely. It also happened to come out the same time the Switch and Breath of the Wild did. So, like, it was either Breath of the Wild or a new Mass Effect nobody likes. I guess I'll get Breath of the Wild.
You're right.
But again, I was able to make that decision because I didn't buy either of those games as soon as they came out. I waited. Even if it was only a month or two, I waited. And now I haven't played Andromeda, which I will eventually play for Reignite. But if they announced another Mass Effect in the Shepard series, which I don't know that they could even do at this point, but if they announced one, I might still be first in line to buy it, even after everything that happened with Andromeda, because I love that core series so much.
Awesome. Yeah, and you bring up an excellent point, that when a game is released, even before it's released, it lives in context. And before it comes out, there is context of how it looks, what it is, how hyped are we. Going back to Bloodstained Ritual of the Night for a moment, and even tying it in with Sonic. One of the big things of the reveal trailer that came out a few days before we recorded this episode, probably a couple weeks before, once we release this, is the fact that they open the video with a compilation of comments from all sorts of internet people being, these graphics look awful, this looks terrible, that looks like shit, that, like, they basically just put up a banner of all these people bitching about the graphics.
Yeah.
And then, okay, here's the update. Like, oh, a game in development is updating its graphics? Wow. That, and then once a game comes out, there is the immediate conversation that happens. There is the hype bubble bursting, whether for good or for ill. And then there is how people feel about it in the immediate. Then there is the calcification of public opinion of a game. There are either further releases in that franchise or games like it that come out later, re-releases on future systems. Right now, Sarah and I are playing through Nier Automata on the PS4. And I'm loving this game.
I've heard very good things.
It's one of these, like, wait, you're telling me there is a dystopian future action RPG that is also a shoot 'em up? Oh, okay. Why haven't I played this before? Holy shit. And it's been a lot of fun. And I was like, wait a minute. Didn't this also have a PS3, Xbox 360 release? Sort of. There was a game set thousands of years before it, just called Nier. And I was like, I remember this being a whole thing and people being shocked that Nier Automata was good. And like reading all of the reviews is, oh, Nier was a very strange mishmash of genre and experience. And people didn't know what to make of it. And wasn't necessarily great. Maybe not. But it wasn't well received. Like in my brain, I'm like, how was that? Was it like a 6 out of 10 game? And it was. But I'm now looking for it. I'm trying to find a copy. I'm having some difficulty. I'm sure other people have had this, like, wow, Nier Automata is so good. I'll get the first one. So that's an experience off the top of my head where, is it a bad game? Well, we thought it was at the time. But, this game is not worth paying $60 for, but it's easily worth $40. Or this game, we don't like what this experience is, but now that we know a little more about this kind of genre or this kind of experience, that we come back to it and go, oh, well, okay. I mean, I'm giving Monster Hunter another try. I found Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate for the 3DS. And I'm like, you know what? This is fine. I don't have to worry about much of the online stuff. Let me get a feel for this kind of game, especially on the go. That's what I'm going to do most of my trying out. And I was reading the reviews for it, and everyone was bitching about it. And I realized because that was the game that they released the Circle Pad Pro, the second joystick for the 3DS. And the new 3DS, the updated version, has the Circle Pad Pro integrated into the system. So looking back on it and being like, why do we got to get this stupid accessory? The game's fine. Why do we got to get this stupid accessory? I'm like, okay, so the game's fine. Cool. Here is $8. I'm going to get easily $8 of fun out of this game.
Well, right. And I think that's part of it, too, is like you get what you pay for in the truest sense. And first of all, that Monster Hunter is one of my favorites. I played that a bunch on my own and then with friends on local co-op. It's a great game. I think I still have it and my 3DS, so we may be able to play it in the near future together.
Okay, that's awesome. I'm excited.
But that's really true. I think that's part of it also is like when you pay $60 for a game, if you don't immediately enjoy it, there's a bit of a pressure there to enjoy, to get your money's worth, essentially. Dragon's Dogma was $30 because, again, it's a re-release. It's not a brand new game, even though it's brand new on the Switch. But I'm easily getting $30 out of it, even if I don't finish it before Ritual of the Night comes out and I jump onto Ritual of the Night. It's a game that's definitely a lot of fun to play and worth playing, and also control scheme is simple enough that I could probably go back to it. Like the reason I'm not worried, because often when you abandon an RPG in the middle somewhere, you have no idea where you're headed next.
Right, yeah.
I'm less worried about that. Well, with Dragon's Dogma because you have a quest list, but also with Final Fantasy IX because the gameplay in Final Fantasy IX was one of the simplest Final Fantasy games of that generation. Like it was literally choose skills, choose equipment, apply skills, learn those skills, use them. That's it. And as far as combat goes, it's pretty straightforward. And so I'm not worried about going back to it. And I think the same thing with Dragon's Dogma. If I ever stop, like the combat is well-rounded and expansive, but simple to like reintegrate. And so I'm not that concerned about like if I stop for a while or I move on to something else. Also, all of the quests have waypoints on the map. And so like I could easily go back and forth with that. Now I'm a notorious game abandoner. When I do stop playing a game in the middle, I rarely go back. Witcher 3 is the game that lives in infamy on my PS4 as a game that I loved, that I want to finish, but I've still yet to go back to, and I've had it for many, many years at this point. And that's part of, I think, why also new game hype is powerful, is like with Spider-Man 4, I picked that game up, or not Spider-Man 4, but
Spider-Man for the PS4.
Right, which I keep shortening to Spider-Man 4, which I guess sort of works.
Perfect Spider-Man 4, PS4, whatever.
Right, exactly. I played the hell out of that game and, finished it. I played it pretty straight through. I did a lot of the side quests and stuff, but I was in it to finish it. And it was because I was so hyped on that game. I was so excited for all the new Marvel movies coming out. I really liked the design of it. I had fun playing it, and I think there are some games that you could be really hyped about, but if the hype doesn't continue on into when you're playing it, you can easily fall off and the newness kind of dissipates pretty quickly. Whereas if you play a game there is no hype for, that you see it online and go, oh, that looks like something I might like, I should finally pick that up and then play it, there might be less pressure to like stay invested because you're just kind of enjoying it and I know gamers hate this word, at a more casual level, which I think is okay. I think it's okay to just pick up a game every once in a while and be like, hey, I like this thing. This is fun. I should go back to it. The intensity of needing to play this brand new thing and finish it before anyone else does. Like if you're looking to avoid spoilers, fine, I get that. So you can talk about like the full story. But beyond that, like, take your time with games and enjoy them. I see no need to play a brand new game when it first comes out as a pressured play. Like if you're excited about a game and you want to play it the day it comes out, that's a whole different story. Then do it. Again, Geoff and I will be playing Ritual of the Night on the 25th of June when it comes out.
I backed the game on Kickstarter, so whenever they send me the physical game, that's when I'm playing it.
Right. But, that said, you shouldn't feel pressure by the games industry to play these brand new games. Like, yes, I guess it's complicated also because from the financial side, you want games to do well so we get more games, right? Simple.
Yeah.
And like I read an interview with Capcom, the head of the game designer and director of Dragon's Dogma, who also did the new Devil May Cry, as I mentioned earlier. He was talking about how Capcom said if Dragon's Dogma does well on the Switch, they're probably going to work to port Devil May Cry 5, which piqued my interest as someone who still hasn't bought the game, wants to play it, and wants to support it. So that was part of the reason I bought it. Now it turns out I love the game anyway. I'm having a blast with it.
Nice.
But I think it's okay to want to support a company just because you want to see them do well,
Right.
There's
there is
nothing
voting
wrong
with your
that.
dollars.
Exactly. And I think that's really important too. I know a ton of people who bought the new Mortal Kombat that just came out and are very unhappy with it. And they were voting with their dollars. They loved Mortal Kombat 10 and the Injustice games. And they're like, oh, Mortal Kombat 11 is going to be great. It's going to be like the rest. And there's been a lot of bad press about it. And I'm not talking about the Jax ending. I'm glad he wipes out slavery in his ending. If you think that's racist, go fuck yourself.
Hear, hear.
But the other stuff like Ronda Rousey, who's a notorious, doesn't like trans people, transphobe, is not a good actress, doesn't do a good job in the game, and the people who made Mortal Kombat 11 kind of ignoring all of that. And that's a big deal, and we should talk about that. And buying the game, you're voting with your dollars that this is acceptable. We talked about a while back. I still haven't bought Red Dead Redemption 2, and I still do not plan to buy it.
Neither have I.
And I'm voting with my dollars. I don't want to spend money on a game that encourages poor treatment of developers and employees. Now, that said, again, like then and now, I'm not going to tell you not to buy these games you want to play. You know, that's your prerogative. But I think it was important to me to ignore the newness and the hype and vote with my dollars and not spend money on this thing. It's why I try and not see bad movies in the theater anymore, you know, or go to the opening weekend of movies that really need it, like your Crazy Rich Asians and Black Panther and other movies that are promoting groups that don't really always get featured in a major movie way the way they should be. You know, I think that kind of stuff and supporting newness that way is very important as well. But you have to pick and choose. You can't fight every battle.
Right. This is all a wonderful way to remind ourselves there is no ethical consumption under capitalism.
Yeah.
However, if we don't draw lines somewhere, well.
Yeah. No, it's true. You know, and also there is regret and buyer's remorse with newness as well. I love the Smash Brothers series. I love Smash Brothers Ultimate. I think it's a great game. I'm really happy with how the fighters play and the multiplayer, but I didn't like the story mode. I don't like the World of Light. So the single player side of it, once I unlocked all the characters, I didn't really want to play it anymore. And do I regret buying it? No, like when Joker came out from Persona 5, I had fun playing as him for a while. I played classic mode with him. But at the end of the day, I don't, you know, there's not a lot of local co-op these days. We've bitched about that before on this podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how Smash Brothers lived in my life, is my friends always came over and played it with me. And I don't go out of my way to say, hey, let's play online. And because the Switch's online system is still not great, you can't kind of just like grab a random group of people or jump in on a random group. It takes more finagling. And so the online experience for Smash Brothers has suffered. And so I haven't really been playing it. And again, that's not the game's fault per se. But like, had I known that then now, or something like that, time travel's weird. If I had known at the time that I was going to be less enamored with it, I might not have dropped the $80 or $90, whatever it was, for the fighter pack and the game, because I'm not playing it as much. You know, hindsight is 20/20, and at the end of the day, I still like playing Smash Brothers. It's on my system, and so when I travel with it or go somewhere, I can pick up and play with friends, which is always fun. But it's just something that seems more clear now, that I was wrapped up in the hype of the newness of it, because I love that series. And after the fact, I have a little bit of buyer's remorse because I'm not playing it as much as I, finger quotes, should. There's no rules, but like, I just feel like I haven't played it enough for how urgently I wanted it and was playing it in the beginning.
Yeah, but you still have the game.
Right.
And there is I'm sure there's some sort of formula that people have worked out as far as dollars to hours of entertainment. And whether it's how long you've spent on the game, how long after you bought it are you playing the game, how much fun were those hours that you spent with the game. There are games that are a 5-hour experience, but it's a fantastic 5-hour experience and well worth the price of admission. And there are games that you'll be grinding for hundreds of hours. And are you enjoying yourself? I guess the scratch is an itch for you, but you're right. There's almost an incentive to decide quickly whether or not you regret this purchase or not. From there, this starts a lot of 0-1, hot, cold sort of reactions. I don't immediately love this, therefore it is terrible and it sucks and I hate it and I hate this company. Or this is great and et cetera, or I'm not playing it as much. I guess I hate it. There's no... I don't want to say there's no standard, but there's no rubric for this.
Right. I think there's no way to really know... there's no right answers when it comes to this stuff. You know, that's why we talk about it. The idea, you have to set your own goals and boundaries. Like, you know, last year you tried to beat a game, what was it, every week? Was the
beat
goal?
A game a week. Yeah, I did okay there. I didn't I didn't successfully do that.
But, but that's also a harder thing to do now with 40, 50, 60, and 70-hour games. Like, to beat a game a week is really hard with modern games. But even older games, I mean, the stuff as early as the PlayStation had a lot of hours in them. And at the end of the day, like, to give a jolt to my credibility, or maybe a jab to it even, I'm someone who owns 4 different copies of Chrono Trigger, will eventually buy the Switch version of Final Fantasy VII, which will be my 3rd version of that game. Like, I like buying new games and I like having brand new experiences, but all the same, take it with a grain of salt, because I'm going to play Final Fantasy VII again. There are certain games that I will replay. There are other games that I'll never replay, like the Spider-Man game, which I loved. I will probably never go back to, because it just takes so much time and investment that I'm more likely to pick up my Switch and play a game that I can turn on in a second and be playing.
Right.
And I think all of that comes down to preference at the end of the day. New or old, you're going to lean into your preferences. And so if the new games coming out strike those chords, then you're going to go for those. But otherwise, if they don't, you may wait, and that's fine too.
Yeah. It's that's the joy of gaming. It should be and is an individual yet community experience.
Yeah, I think that what's important is having the right community. I think playing the right games doesn't matter, because what are the right games, right?
What are the right games?
Right. I think it's like, for example, I love our Discord community. I love the people who chat with us on Discord and talk about games and post about games. And being able to freak out about the new Ritual of the Night trailer that had the release date in it in a chat where other people can react to is great. And I think having that kind of a community, if you'd like to join ours, you can. But otherwise, any community where you can chat about games that way, I think is really important. And at the end of the day is the key, whether it's new or old. It's why I like being a part of the Waypoint community, and I'm on their Discord as well, because people are just so supportive of just playing games. And while there's tons of toxic gamers out there and there's tons of toxicity still in the gaming community, there is hope for us to rise above it and conquer it if we really want to,
Right. And it's that thing of, can we change every gamer's mind? No, but we can look to curate who we talk to. And that sounds so cold, but it's, the idea of cutting toxic people out of your life.
Yeah, it's not your job to educate them is something I'm learning in adulthood. To a degree, there's leading by an example, I think, but to stop and teach every person how they're being a terrible person becomes exhausting, and draining. And at the end of the day, the pressure shouldn't be on the better people to teach the not better people. The pressure should be on the not good people to learn, to frickin' open their eyes. And,
well, yes.
And I think that, I think there's finding a balance there. But at the end of the day, chatting with the people who will support you and are interested in what you have to say, I think is a really healthy and important thing to have.
It absolutely can. That sort of support is invaluable. And that's where, in its simplest form, where hype comes from. Friends talk about a game they're excited about, and then everybody is planning on getting it. I mean, when Pokemon Sun and Moon came out, I and a bunch of friends, we all got it first day, we ordered it, and we all hung out together. And we started in one place, we ended up going and getting food, and we essentially wandered around the city a little bit with our 3DSs, just playing, doing a couple of trades and doing all of that. And after the fact, folks' opinions on Sun and Moon have cooled, but I would not trade that day of insanity for anything.
Sure, and I think at the end of the day, personal experiences are going to outweigh the thoughts of others on new games and games that have just come out.
Right, and a game doesn't have to be a consistently enjoyable experience from the moment it's released to eternity. We all have our journeys of finding, enjoying, leaving behind, coming back to, rediscovering games. And that's kind of the beauty of it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it was really satisfying. So I play a lot of online games with the same group of people. Some of them are in the Discord, some of them are not. But that I've been playing games with for over a decade, probably even longer, from when we hop from MMO or online game to online game. And when Anthem was coming out, we were all pretty hyped about it. And I played the beta and I really liked it, but I wasn't sold on it. And then I unfortunately had lost my job before, which now I have a new day job, so all is well. But at the time, I had lost my job, and so I wasn't spending a ton of money on games. And so when Anthem came out, I was like, maybe I'll pass on this experience. I'll buy a few cheaper single player experiences to get me through, but I'll pass on this. And now after the fact, the game's only been out a few months. Most of my friends have abandoned it and don't play it anymore. And so I'm glad. I'm kind of glad that I didn't give in to the hype of even my own friend group, because I had second thoughts. Because at the end of the day, I probably still wouldn't be playing it if they weren't, and I'm glad I didn't spend the money on it, And I'm not putting down anybody who's enjoying Anthem, because I've heard there's a lot to like about it. But I'm just glad personally I didn't make that investment on a game that I wouldn't still be playing, because I would have regretted that. And at the end of the day, when talking about new games, you should be satisfied with your choices, new, old. You should be satisfied and enjoy the things you do. I mean, we all make mistakes, but at the end of the day, gaming comes to your personal enjoyment first. Even if you're playing with friends, you should be enjoying the experience and not just playing it because your friends play it. And I think that being aware of that and giving into that is okay.
And, absolutely giving into that and knowing what you enjoy. And it's like a few days ago, I made a very surprise purchase for me. I was at a used book and video game store in Midtown called Book Off that also carries Japanese titles. Now, I try to look for Japanese handheld games because there are some that are the language barrier doesn't matter as much. Most handheld systems are region free, most. And so I was just looking through them. And I found a PSP game that I did not know existed, called IQ Mania. Now, for PS1, that there was a puzzle game called Intelligent Cube that I deeply love. I don't think anyone else in my friend group likes this game. Maybe, I'm not sure. I don't think so. But this game has the original, the Japan-only sequel, and several other features and contents of things that never reached America. It was $10. I love this thing. I charged up my PSP and I am playing it, and with absolutely no hype because I was not even aware this thing existed. And no one is going. I can't think of anyone that I know that I see regularly that is going to care as much about this as me. My wife knows how much I love Intelligent Cube, and when I told her about it, she was excited for me.
Right.
But she's not going to play it.
No.
But it's remarkable the sort of, if you're just open to the experience, what you can find, the fun you can make for yourself, the simple enjoyment of the hobby, which is, at the end of the day, certainly what I strive for.
Yeah, I think the newness of the game doesn't matter. It's how new the experience is and whether
Correct.
that new experience does anything for you. The fact that when I first got Shovel Knight, well, I'd borrowed your copy, but I had returned it because I wasn't really playing it. And then when the Treasure Trove came out on Switch, I bought it and was obsessed with it. And you endured my ramblings at length about how much I loved this game that you already knew that I would like and that you had played. That was new to me in that moment. I'm still waiting with bated breath for King of Cards, which will come out eventually.
Same.
As they've pushed it back again, but I see that as a good sign. It just means it'll be great content, and they haven't disappointed yet. So
right.
But yeah, it's like that's the kind of experience. And because I had that experience with Yacht Club, I want to buy their new game that's coming out, the samurai game, the Cyber Katana, maybe it's called. I don't remember.
Maybe.
But don't at me. My memory sucks. But the fact is, they're publishing a new game. They didn't make it, but they're publishing it. And I'm going to buy it probably just because I love their previous work. And I know this will be great because I created that kind of new, fresh, and loving experience from a game that everyone else had already played.
Yeah. And as somebody who enjoyed the game before giving it to you and everything else, I was happy to hear all of your gushing about it, happy to hear all the excitement, and it reinvigorated my excitement for it. I mean, even talking about it now, I'm like, I could play it again.
Right. And I think that's the sign of a truly good and strong new game experience, is wanting to replay it. I'll never forget my experience with Arkham Asylum, because it was one of the first games in many years where the minute I finished it, I started New Game Plus and played it immediately again. which I don't do with a lot of games. A lot of games are a complete experience. I finish it and then I don't go back to it. That's kind of just how our culture has kind of designed it a little bit. The replayability has become less important because multiplayer has become a gimmick and because there are so many games now. But that said, if there's a game that I finished and I automatically boot back up and start from the beginning again, that's a good game.
Right, and it doesn't matter if it's a 1-hour game or a 30-hour game.
Right.
Like, if you want to play it again, yes, success, good. So I'm excited for Cyber Shadow, which is the Yacht Club game. I looked it up.
Thank you.
No worries. And yeah, there's a lot of give and take and push and pull on this, and naturally we don't have any big conclusions on this. When do we ever?
That's true. But as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts on how you experience playing new games and if there's a pressure to play new things. I know that there are a lot of gamers that I'm friends with who take pride on playing the latest thing or picking up the latest thing. But then there are also folks I know who listen to this show who are doing what we're doing and experiencing older games for the first time. I know Scoop Jessica is playing Final Fantasy 12 and made a post on it on Twitter about how she loves the graphics and loves the design, but the characters are really boring. Does that get better? Meh. Sort of. The story gets better, I think, but the characters tend to stay pretty on their path, more or less.
I'm sorry, does she not like Baltier?
I'm actually not sure.
How?
I know. Well, also, Baltier is pretty much Han Solo. That's why you like him.
Yeah.
I happen to be quite fond of Fran. I can't imagine why. But yeah, I think it's really cool to see our community chat about their new experiences with old games. So share with us in the comments, post on the Discord, chat with us on your social media of choice. Tell us about your experience with games that are either new experiences or brand new games, or how you disseminate what you play and why, and how you avoid that kind of pressure.
Yeah, well, all of your experiences. We want to know them. We want to hear them. This is a conversation. Thank you for being a part of it. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And happy gaming.